Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with my February book haul. So as usual, I'm going to start out by talking about the charity that I chose to donate to. I took this idea from my friend Kelly at Cozy Reader Kelly. So for every book that I buy, I donate at least $1, usually more, to a particular organization, and I change that up every month. And the one that I chose for February was care.org. They fight global poverty and world hunger, and they also are doing a lot with specific crises that are happening right now, like COVID-19, Ukrainian refugee and other refugee crises, and they do a lot of like really important work. They're also very highly rated as a charity, so I will link them below if you would like to check them out. And I also want to mention for this book haul that I am actually not going to talk about all the books that I bought in February, because some of them I already read, so you'll hear about them in an upcoming wrap-up. Some of them I am talking about in a TBR video that is either going up very soon or has already gone up, so you're going to hear about it there. Or there's a few books that I'm actually keeping secret for a couple of projects. And I also had a lot of books, so I wanted to cut this down as much as possible. Shout out to my friend Kazen from Always Doing, because I had not even thought of like not talking about the books I've already read until she mentioned that that's always what she does in her hauls. So I don't plan to do that like permanently going forward, but I thought for this month, when I was trying to save time, it might be a good way to go. Okay, so I have these kind of broken down into categories, but I'm going to start off with a book that was actually a gift, and that was from my lovely friend Mary Margaret from MM's Musings. She surprised me with a Valentine's Day present, which was so lovely of her, and that is for The Rose Gate by Hannah Sandvig, which is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. She was asking me, Mary Margaret was asking me about a book that I like was really in the mood to pick up, or I'd been thinking about a lot, and I mentioned this one, so she got it for me, which was just so kind of her. And yeah, I love Beauty and the Beast retellings. I also think this cover is absolutely stunning, and I don't know much about it outside of the fact that it is a retelling of a fairy tale I love to read retellings of, so that's pretty much all I need to know. So thank you so much, Mary Margaret, that was so kind of you. And then I have a few books that are not in other particular categories. One of the reasons I had so many books this month is because I did some damage on the Barnes & Noble pre-order sale. So you will see a lot of those books later, but I also have just some kind of miscellaneous books that I wanted to talk about. One is The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. I noticed that this book had finally come out in paperback, and it's one I'd been curious about for a while. And this is a historical fantasy set in a world where when women get married, they get fitted with these collars that stop them from using magic, which is very creepy, obviously. And it's about our main female character who doesn't want that to happen, and she ends up, I think, making a deal. She ends up making a deal that with one character that makes her get involved with another character who I think is the love interest. I've heard like somewhat mixed things about this, but I don't know. I just feel like I could enjoy it. I'm just very curious about this one, and I feel like the romance sounds interesting, and I feel like it sounds like the main character, I don't know, I'm a little nervous about the way this book handles the like female friendship or like not like other girls thing, but I'm hopeful that it's going to comment on that. Like basically I'm hoping that the main character is not like the only woman in the book who we're supposed to like, you know? Then I also have The Bright and Breaking Sea by Chloe Neal. This is the first book in the Captain Kit Brightling series, I think, which is another historical fantasy. And the reason I picked this up, like it's been kind of on my radar for a while, but Bethany from Beautifully Booked Bethany recommended a few different books for me specifically, and this was one of the ones that I didn't own yet. So I was like, this is a perfect excuse to pick it up because I've been wanting to anyway. So I'm just, yeah, really excited. I think this does take place on the sea, but I know that Bethany doesn't usually like ship books either, and the fact that she still really enjoyed this makes me hopeful I would like it too. And this is another one where I just think that I don't know, the sound of the romance sounds really good. Like the vibe I'm getting from the male lead, like the love interest, is that he is like a society gentleman who has hidden depths, which is a thing that I like. So yeah, excited for that. Then this one's a little funny because I actually had this on a books I have taken off my TBR video. Yeah, but obviously I put it back on my TBR, and that is For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, because one of the reasons I had taken it off, besides just in general kind of mixed reviews, is I heard about the like blood magic kind of aspect, which is something that like if it's a small part of a book I don't mind, but I don't love when it's a huge focus. But I think I'm prepared for that now, so I think it'll be okay. And also there were some very specific things I heard about this book. Like I know Fadwa was talking about it a lot, and like the specific things they said about like the way the romance plays out, and like it's a very like subplot kind of romance, which I love in fantasy. I don't know, it just made me think I'm gonna like it. So I'm gonna try this one anyway, even after deciding I wasn't gonna like it, because sometimes we change our minds, and that's okay. Okay, so getting into some of my pre-order selections. These books were actually pre-orders of paperback editions because you guys know I like paperbacks more than hardcovers anyway, and these were books I really wanted to read, and I noticed that there was a paperback coming out soon and the pre-order sale counted for that. So I have Malice by Heather Walter. This is the first book in a duology. It is a sapphic Sleeping Beauty retelling between the princess and I think the enchantress. This is another one that Bethany really loved. So I got that when I saw the paperback had come out, or was going to come out at the time I made the order. But I also got the paperback for Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I don't think I need to spend much time on this because everybody knows about this book, but it's a modern fantasy version of like a retelling of King Arthur, following a black main character and going to school at it's like at a college in the South, and there's like secret societies, and I believe it deals a lot with race and with the racism and microaggressions that she experiences and like privilege and all of that. Heard fantastic things, so I definitely wanted to read that one. And then I also have Furia by Shamile Said Mendez. This is a contemporary novel that is set in Argentina, and our main character is a really amazing soccer player, but her parents don't want to let her do that professionally. And I believe it involves a boy that she used to be involved with, and is he like a soccer player too now? I think he is. Yes. Yeah, I just think this sounds really, really interesting. I know this got really amazing reviews. I have friends who have really loved this, and I knew that I wanted to read that one as well. And then these are books that are also paperbacks, but these like came out in paperback, which I love when books do that. Please do that more, publishers. But I have a romance book that is The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. This has gotten pretty reviews from what I've heard, but I'm still like reasonably hopeful about it just because I don't know, I'm still figuring out my taste in romances, so negative reviews aren't going to necessarily put me off something that I think I could enjoy, you know? But I think this is going to be a buddy read between me and Julia from Shakespeare and Such. I think we're going to try and do that at some point. But yeah, this involves a book writing duo who something happens where they have this big fight and they don't work together anymore. But then they have to come back together to write one last book, and of course they fall in love. Yeah, I think this sounds interesting. This isn't quite a second chance romance, which is good because I don't like that trope. I also have Salam with Love by Sarah Sharaf Beg. This was another one of my most anticipated releases. So yeah, it's a Muslim main character. She goes to stay with family, I think, and it's about her like getting more in touch with her faith. I believe it's set during Ramadan, and I've heard from reviewers that the romance subplot is handled in a way that is very respectful and like mindful of what many Muslims believe about like romance and dating and all of that. At least that's what I've heard. So I hope that's true, and yeah, I am anticipating this one. So obviously I was excited to pick that up. And then a book that I haven't heard such great things about the representation, which I'm really sad because I had already gotten this, but that is You Truly Assumed by Lila Sabrine. An absolutely stunning cover. It's about 3 black Muslim girls who start a blog, and it ends up really resonating with a lot of people. It's about being black and Muslim, and then they start getting I think like they start getting like hate mail or something, and it's about like the friendship that develops between the 3 girls. And this sounds like a really amazing premise, but again, I've not heard great reviews, and specifically I've heard kind of mixed things about the representation. So I'm going to go into this one with that in mind, but I did pick that one up as well. By the way, we're now into just the regular pre-order section. I should have mentioned that, and I think this is going to be the last section maybe? I think. Because I got a lot of books. I also got The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio. I did end up going for the US cover, even though both of them are gorgeous. There's something about that green that I really, really love. Probably because it's my favorite color, and I don't feel like enough books have green covers. Yeah, this is a fantasy that is, I think, like in my most anticipated releases, I mentioned that it reminded me of a certain folktale or fairy tale, and I think I saw that actually in a synopsis later, that it is inspired by a certain one, so that's cool. Yeah, I won't get into the synopsis because I'll just link my anticipated releases video where I talk about it, but I've heard pretty good things about this one, so I'm glad to have that. Also from that, actually I think all the rest of these, almost all the rest of these are going to be from that video, so I'll just whip through these really quick. But I have Dream Annie Dream by Waka T. Brown. This is a contemporary about a young girl who she loves musical theater, and she's so excited to be cast in her school's production of The King and I. And then her classmates, who are mostly white, start spreading rumors that she only got cast because she's Asian. And it's a play about Asian characters. And it's about her fighting back against that. It's about the importance of representation and theater, and I just feel like this is going to be a really, really wonderful book. It, yeah, just speaks to a lot of very important things and things that I enjoy reading about, so I can't wait for that one. Then Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. I am so excited about this book. This is a queer YA contemporary about a young girl who is realizing that she's bisexual, and like she's always had crushes on boys, but now she starts spending a lot of time with a girl in her class who she really likes, and it's about like identity and family and growing up, and I've heard really, really amazing things about this. I absolutely can't wait to read my friend's book. Like, that's just, amazing. I feel like a proud parent. I'm like so proud of Raquel, so very excited for that. And then In the Serpent's Wake by Rachel Hartman. Again, I talked about this one. This is quite a chunker in that video. So this is the second and final book in the Tests of the Road duology. I feel like it's going to be an emotional roller coaster, so I'm very excited for it, but I'm nervous. Sophia Acosta Makes a Scene by Emma Othogui. This is another one I talked about. Our main character is a girl whose parents are ballet dancers and they want her to kind of follow in those footsteps, but she really likes doing costumes. I think that sounds lovely, and I believe she's also Cuban, or Cuban American. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about is a book in a series that I have not read the first book, but I'm confident enough that I'm okay with this. That is Shattered Midnight by Danielle Clayton. This is the second book in the Mirror series, which is by different authors. Like, they're all set at different time periods. It's following different generations of the same family who is affected by a curse, I think. The first book is by Julie C. Dow, and I'm even more excited about reading that book since I really loved a book that I read from her last year. And then I knew I was going to want to read this because, for one thing, I've heard specifically very good things about this book, but also Danielle Clayton is an author I have really enjoyed. So yeah, really excited for that one as well. That is, I think, the last book I'm going to talk about. Again, I got more books than this, but there are various reasons that I'm not going to spend time on them in this video. And if you want to know how I'm doing with my books coming in versus going out, not so great. Not as good as I was hoping, at least. So I got 29 books in February. I know that pre-order sale really did me in. But I did get 23 books read from my physical TBR. It actually would have been more. I read a ton of books in February, but it just happened that like some of them were like library books or like digital copies or whatever. So even though I read like 28 or 29 books, I didn't get all of those off my physical TBR, but still, that's like pretty good. I'm 6 books behind for this month. Even though I was a few books behind in January as well, so I'm a little nervous, but I still think tracking this is good because I know I would have been even more behind if I wasn't paying attention to this. So I'm trying to keep it in perspective. Also, for January, the books that I got off my TBR included a few books that I was unhauling that I hadn't read. And for February, I believe these are books all that I read from my physical TBR, which I feel like is pretty good. I don't know, that makes me feel even a little better, is like not just that I'm getting books off my TBR, but like I read them. I didn't just like give up on reading them, you know? So anyway, please comment down below. Let me know if you have read and enjoyed any of these books, or a book that you got recently that you're excited for. Again, I am not doing as great about keeping these numbers balanced as I was hoping, so I'm gonna try and catch up in future months, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. But I'm trying to tell myself that tracking it is still the most important thing, because it's good that I know this, because like I've said before, I feel like I tend to keep these numbers even, but is that really true? And also, because I read so many books, I feel like sometimes I can like overcompensate, or like, not overcompensate, but I get overconfident. I feel like, oh, I can buy more books because I read so many. It's like, I do, but maybe not as many as I think I do, you know? Okay, enough rambling. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!